As I stood at my college graduation holding my diploma, I turned and saw my parents' faces go pale. They looked shocked, guilty, almost scared. In that moment, they finally understood what I had done and why. They paid for my sister's college, not mine. And now, they were seeing the result of that choice right in front of them. My name is Rowan Thorne. I'm 22, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. I wasn't the loud kid or the troublemaker. I was the quiet one who did what I was supposed to do. I studied hard, followed rules, and tried to make my parents proud. I always hoped they would look at me the way they looked at my sister. My parents, Elaine and Curtis, never hid the fact that my sister, Marissa, was their favorite. Marissa was older, lively, and always got what she wanted. If she wanted a new outfit, she got it. If she messed up, it was called a small mistake. If I did the same thing, it was disappointing or not like you. When college time came, they didn't even hesitate. They paid for Marissa's nursing degree, her apartment, her books, everything. They told everyone how proud they were of her. They told her she deserved it. When it came to me, they sat me down and said they didn't have enough to help. They said I was strong and independent, that I would figure it out. They said Marissa needed support more. It hurt, but I didn't cry in front of them. I just nodded and swallowed everything I felt. Later, alone, the pain hit me. All I ever wanted was fairness. Not gifts, not praise, just a chance like she got. So I went to college with loans hanging over my head. I worked 2 jobs. Some days I was so tired I couldn't think straight, but I showed up anyway. I walked around campus with coffee in one hand and textbooks in the other, trying to stay awake. There were nights I ate cheap instant noodles and stared at the ceiling, wondering why I wasn't worth the same effort as my sister. Every paycheck went to school bills. Every break I got was used to work more hours, not rest. I pushed through every semester alone, because I didn't have a choice. My parents didn't call to ask how I was doing. They didn't visit. When they did talk to me, they always ended up talking about Marissa, her good grades, her cute apartment, her fun new friends. They said she was thriving. I would quietly say, "That's good," even when my chest felt tight. I never forgot how they made me feel, like I was second place in a race I never agreed to run. I never yelled, never argued. I just kept working, kept moving, kept building something they didn't believe in. And on graduation day, when I stood there holding that diploma, I finally let them see the truth. For the first time, they realized I had done everything without them, and maybe, just maybe, they had chosen the wrong child to believe in. When I think back to being a kid, I can see the difference so clearly now, even though at the time I kept trying to explain it away. I used to believe parents couldn't have favorites. I thought love naturally came equal. But in our house, it didn't. I remember watching Marissa get picked up after school in a shiny car, wearing her new gymnastics outfit. She had private lessons twice a week. Mom would clap and gush about how our star athlete needed the best training. Meanwhile, I played baseball with a used glove Dad bought at a yard sale for $3. I didn't complain. I tried to take care of it like it was brand new. I wanted them to see I could be happy with less, hoping it would make them proud. It never did. Birthdays were the same kind of quiet heartbreak. Marissa's birthdays were full of balloons, themes, and big cakes covered in her favorite colors. There were kids running around, music playing, photos being taken. My birthdays were smaller. Sometimes just a store-bought cupcake, a happy birthday, and a little gift already used by someone else before me. I learned early to smile and say thank you, even when my chest felt heavy. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want to give them another reason to say Marissa was easier to love. They always asked me to help Marissa with school. "You're good at this," Mom would say, placing her worksheets in front of me. I sat with my sister for hours, explaining math or reading line by line with her. When she got a passing grade, they cheered like she had climbed a mountain. "She works so hard," Dad would say proudly. When I brought home straight A's, they barely looked up. "Good. Keep it up." That was all. No hug, no smile, no pride in their eyes. Just an expectation. I became used to working hard without applause. I told myself being strong didn't need recognition. But when I went to bed at night, I stared at the ceiling wondering why no one ever celebrated me too. I tried to earn what Marissa seemed to get just by being her. I cleaned my room without being asked. I did chores. I brought home awards from school. I tried to be the child who made things easy. I hoped if I kept proving myself, eventually they'd look at me with the same warmth they saved for her. But each time, I was met with silence or a distracted "that's good." Meanwhile, Marissa could forget to clean her room or bring home a C on a test, and Mom would pat her hair and say, "You'll do better next time, sweet girl." I used to pretend it didn't bother me, but every little moment collected inside me like small stones. I carried them quietly, one after another, until someday they would grow too heavy to ignore. All I ever wanted back then was simple. I just wanted to feel chosen, too. But growing up in that house, I learned early that wanting and receiving are two very different things. The day college decisions came felt like it should have been one of the happiest days of my life. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, hands shaking slightly as I clicked the email. When the screen showed the acceptance letter to the engineering program, I felt a rush of pride. I had worked so hard for it. I earned it on my own. For a second, I imagined my parents hugging me, telling me they were proud. I let myself believe that maybe this was the moment everything would change. Marissa got her college acceptance that same week. A nursing program nearby, not as competitive, but still good. She squealed and waved her letter around the living room like it was a trophy. My parents clapped, beaming, talking about dorm decor and school colors and how she was meant for great things. I stood nearby holding my letter quietly, waiting for my moment. When I finally showed them, they smiled, but it wasn't the same excited, warm smile they had just given her. It was polite, thin, quick. "Good job," my dad said, and my mom nodded. 2 days later, they called us into the living room. Their tone was serious, like they were about to share bad news. My stomach tightened. Dad cleared his throat and said money was tight. Mom folded her hands and said they could only afford to pay for one college education. Then, in a calm voice like it was the most reasonable thing in the world, they said they had chosen to pay for Marissa's. "Nursing programs are expensive," Mom added, "and she'll need support." Dad looked at me and said, "You're very capable, Rowan. You're the independent one. You'll figure something out." I felt something inside me fall, like the floor had dropped away. My acceptance letter suddenly felt heavier in my hands. I wanted to ask why I wasn't worth the same help, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just nodded, like their choice made perfect sense. My chest felt tight, my eyes burned, but I kept my face steady. I told them it was okay. I told them I'd gotten scholarships and financial aid and that it would cover most of it. It wasn't fully true, but I couldn't stand the thought of them seeing me as weak or desperate. I needed to keep some pride. That night in my room, the anger slipped away and left something heavier, a quiet sadness. But beneath it, something else started forming, slow and firm, like steel cooling. If they didn't believe in me, I would believe in myself. If they thought Marissa needed them more, then fine, I would learn not to need anyone. I decided right there I would go anyway. I would work, save, fight through whatever came. And when I walked across that stage one day, I would know I did it alone. They made their choice. I made mine too. And mine would change everything. College life didn't feel like the movies or the brochures. It was early mornings, long nights, and tired feet. I worked at a small diner off campus, taking orders from people rushing through breakfast before work. I smiled, filled coffee cups, and wiped down tables until my wrists hurt. After classes, I went straight to the campus bookstore and stacked shelves, rang up textbooks, and fought sleep behind the counter. My backpack was always heavy, my body always tired, and my bank account always close to empty. Most nights, I ate cheap ramen or peanut butter sandwiches in my tiny dorm room. I could hear other students laughing in the hallway, talking about parties, weekend plans, or trips home. I usually sat alone with my laptop, trying to watch lectures or finish assignments while my eyes fought to stay open. I didn't have time for clubs or new friends. I didn't go home during breaks because I needed every shift I could get. I told my parents I was busy studying, and they believed it without question. Deep down, I knew they never worried because they assumed I was fine. I was always the one who could handle it. The hardest moment came during finals week my first year. I had barely slept for 3 days, working night shifts and studying between customers. My head felt foggy and heavy, like my thoughts were moving through mud. I sat in the library with notes spread everywhere, trying to memorize formulas, but everything blurred. I stood up to go get water, and suddenly my vision went dark around the edges. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, someone calling my name loudly. A student I barely knew helped me sit up, and the librarian gave me a cup of water. My hands were shaking. I told them I was fine, but inside, I felt small and overwhelmed. On the walk back to my dorm, All I could think was, I can't fall apart. If I do, there's nobody to catch me. Around that time, I met Dr. Leland Corbin. He was one of my engineering professors. Calm voice, silver hair, kind eyes. He noticed I stayed after class a lot to ask questions and study quietly in the back of the room. One day, he stopped me as I packed my bag and asked if everything was okay. I hesitated, then simply said I worked a lot. He didn't push, but over time, he became someone who believed in me. He praised my projects, challenged me to think bigger, and once told me, "You have a mind built for solving problems. Don't let exhaustion steal that from you." It was the closest thing to encouragement I had felt in years. Slowly, I learned to balance work, school, and my own limits. I organized my time better, took naps when I could, and stopped feeling guilty for taking breaks. I learned to cook simple meals that weren't just noodles. I built a life out of effort and discipline, piece by piece, and even though it was exhausting, it made me stronger. Every day I survived made me stand a little straighter. Every exam I passed reminded me why I was fighting. I wasn't thriving yet, but I was surviving. And with each hard step, I could feel something change inside me, not bitterness, but a quiet strength. I wasn't becoming someone who needed help. I was becoming someone who knew how to stand alone. While I was learning how to stretch $5 into meals for a week, Marissa's life sounded like a long vacation. She called me often, not to check on me, but to talk about herself. She bragged about weekend road trips with her friends, dinners at nice restaurants, and her new car, a white SUV our parents bought her as a surprise. She laughed as she talked about decorating her apartment, choosing throw pillows and kitchen sets like it was the hardest work in the world. I listened quietly, holding my cheap phone, sitting on my thin dorm mattress with my bag of instant noodles beside me. I didn't tell her about my second job or the nights I stayed up so late my vision blurred. I knew she wouldn't understand, and she probably wouldn't care. Whenever I spoke to my mom, she always sounded busy or distracted. She would talk about how stressed Marissa was with her classes and how tired she felt after clinicals. "Your sister has a lot on her plate," Mom would sigh, like Marissa carried the weight of the world. She never asked how I was holding up. She didn't ask how many hours I worked or if I was eating okay. It was always, "Marissa's really pushing herself." All I could think about was how I had pushed myself so far I had fainted in a library, and no one in my family even knew. I visited home once during college, only because I had a single free weekend and missed the feeling of sleeping without noise outside my door. When I walked into the house, I froze for a moment. Marissa's room looked completely remodeled, new furniture, fresh paint, matching bedding, photos on the walls. It looked like something out of a magazine. I told myself not to compare, not to feel jealous. But when I opened the door to my old room, my heart sank. My bed was gone. Boxes filled the space, stacked in messy piles. Old decorations were pushed into a corner. It wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was a storage closet. I stood there staring, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. This was the room where I used to dream about college, where I stayed up studying for spelling tests, where I imagined my parents someday being proud. Now it looked like I had never mattered enough to keep a space. Mom walked by and caught me staring. Without even looking embarrassed, she shrugged and said, "We needed space, and you're barely here. Marissa deserves comfort. You'll toughen up." She said it so casually, like it was a normal thing for a parent to say, like love was something you had to earn, and I hadn't earned enough. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just nodded and stayed quiet, but inside something solid cracked. I realized that no matter how hard I worked or how responsible I was, they would always see Marissa as the one worth caring for. And me. I was just the one who could handle being forgotten. That truth settled deep in my chest and stayed there, heavy and cold, reminding me that sometimes family isn't a place you return to. Sometimes it's the place you learn to walk away from. After that visit home, something inside me settled into place. Not anger, not bitterness, but a quiet understanding. If I was going to build a life, it would be without expecting anyone to cheer me on or help me. So I started planning in silence. Every night after work and homework, I searched for internships, scholarships, anything that could give me a small step forward. I filled out forms, wrote essays until my fingers hurt, and kept my phone on silent at the diner in case someone called about an opportunity. Every time I clicked submit, it felt like I was carving my own path, one tireless inch at a time. Slowly, the effort began to work. I won a small scholarship. Then a work-study spot opened in the engineering lab. It didn't pay much, but it meant fewer hours at the bookstore and more time learning things that actually mattered for my future. I built savings little by little, not enough to feel safe, but enough to feel like I wasn't drowning anymore. The loans still sat heavy on my shoulders, but they weren't forever. I kept telling myself that someday I would pay every cent on my own and never owe anyone anything, especially not my parents. That same semester, I met Caleb Merritt in one of my classes. He sat next to me one day and joked about how the professor's handwriting looked like a medical emergency. I laughed, a real laugh, not one of those tired breath exhales I usually gave the world. Caleb had a calm energy, steady and kind. He didn't try to impress anyone. He just listened, and somehow that mattered. He noticed when I looked exhausted and always asked if I'd eaten. He never pushed for details, but he stayed nearby without needing to be asked. Sometimes we studied together in the library, sharing quiet moments that made school feel a little less heavy. He became the one person I didn't have to pretend around. I never told him much about my family, but he could tell there was distance there. One evening, when he saw me staring tiredly at a spreadsheet of scholarships, he just said, "You're doing all this on your own, huh?" I nodded, and he didn't pity me or say something empty like it'll all work out. He just said, "Then when you make it, it'll be because of you. Nobody can take that from you." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until it hit me like a breath I hadn't breathed in years. From then on, I made myself a promise, simple and unbreakable. I would finish school. I would pay my loans, $1 at a time. I would succeed, and my parents would not get to claim any part of it. I would not owe them gratitude for something they never gave. They chose Marissa. They backed her with money, comfort, praise. They left me to fend for myself, expecting I'd survive without complaint. Fine. I would survive. More than that, I would rise. But when the day came that I stood strong, I would do it without them. And one day, they would look at me and understand what it meant to bet everything on the wrong child. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I wanted them to feel the weight of their own choices. They chose her. I would let that choice speak for itself. By my junior year, everything slowly shifted. The long nights, the early shifts, the constant pressure, none of it went to waste. Hard work finally started to show results. I earned a full scholarship because of my grades and my research hours in the engineering lab. Not only that, but I secured a paid internship with a local engineering company. It wasn't glamorous, mostly assisting and learning, but the paycheck felt like victory. Every dollar I earned felt like a quiet answer to every time someone underestimated me. Once the scholarship kicked in and the internship checks started coming, I paid off my loans quietly. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't make announcements. I didn't scream or celebrate on social media like other students did. I just made the payments, month by month, until one day the balance reached zero. No one clapped for me, no proud parents hugged me, no cake or cards. But I didn't need it anymore. The peace of knowing I was no longer tied to debt was enough. I had freed myself without help, without applause. Meanwhile, my parents kept imagining me struggling the whole time. In their world, I was still the child scraping by, probably building character, as they used to call it. They never asked about my financial situation or my classes. They assumed things were hard and left it there. My mom once mentioned on the phone that she wished she could help more, in that distant tone people use when they don't plan to help at all. I just told her I was managing. She seemed satisfied with that answer, never digging deeper. Marissa was about to finish her nursing program around the same time. My parents were planning a big celebration for her, decorations, catering, a rented hall. They talked about it every call. My dad bragged to neighbors about his future nurse. My mom sent pictures of decorations and cake ideas. They asked if I could come early to help set things up, like I was part of the staff, not someone finishing college too. I didn't argue. I didn't remind them I had my own graduation coming. I just said I'd see what I could do. When my own graduation approached, I didn't feel the excitement others felt. For them, it was a celebration. For me, it felt like closing a door, quietly and permanently. I filled out the ceremony form, picked up my cap and gown, and sent my parents a simple message with the date and time. No enthusiastic call, no invitation speech, just information. A formality. I didn't expect cheering. I didn't expect flowers or signs or hugs. I wasn't inviting them to be proud of me. I was inviting them so they could witness the ending, the closing chapter of everything they ignored, everything they brushed aside. They had no idea what I had accomplished without them. They still pictured me struggling, scraping by, waiting for life to get better. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I had done it. Quietly, painfully, fully on my own. When graduation day came, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't emotional. I felt steady, calm, and ready. This wasn't a moment for them. It was for me. And soon, they would see exactly who I had become without their help. And maybe, just maybe, they would realize what it cost them to never believe in me. Graduation morning felt calm, almost too calm. I put on my gown and cap in my small room, smoothing the fabric and staring at myself in the mirror. There was no nervous flutter in my chest, no shaky excitement. Just a steady heartbeat, a quiet pride, and a feeling that something long and heavy was finally ending. When I walked toward the ceremony hall, the air smelled like summer and new beginnings. Students around me were laughing, families were waving balloons, cameras clicked everywhere. I walked alone, but I didn't feel lonely anymore. The ceremony began, names were called, tassels moved, and cheers echoed around the stadium. When it was time for academic honors, I heard my name called first, valedictorian. People clapped, then stood. A full standing ovation. For me. For the student who had worked nights and studied in library corners, who fainted from exhaustion, who had no cheerleaders at home but kept going anyway. I walked up to the stage and accepted my award, my diploma, and the applause felt like quiet justice. Not loud revenge, just truth finally seen. When I gave my speech, I didn't say anything dramatic. I didn't cry or shake. I simply thanked the people who believed in me when no one else did, professors, co-workers, and the few friends who saw me trying. I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang, and added, sometimes support comes from unexpected places, and sometimes you learn to grow strong because no one lifted you when you fell. The room was silent before the applause came again. In the crowd, I saw my parents shift in their seats, confused, almost uncomfortable, like they weren't sure whether to clap or stay still. After the ceremony, professors and classmates came to hug me or shake my hand. Dr. Corbin congratulated me with a proud smile. My internship supervisor joined us, shaking my hand firmly and telling me he couldn't wait to work with me again. I saw my parents watching, stiff and unsure, like the world had suddenly tilted in a direction they didn't recognize. When I finally walked over to them, they looked surprised, almost nervous. My mom tried to smile. "We're so proud of you," she said, the words sounding practiced, like she had rehearsed them in case they were needed. My dad nodded slowly, eyes searching my face for something familiar. "Must feel good to be done," he added. "It does," I said simply. Then I told them what I hadn't told them all these years. That my loans were paid. That I had won scholarships. That the internship they barely knew about had turned into a high-paying engineering job all the way in Seattle. That I would be moving in a month, alone. Their faces changed instantly. The color left my mom's cheeks. My dad blinked like he didn't hear me right. "Seattle," my mom repeated, voice thin. "Yes," I said. "I worked hard for this. And I'm starting fresh." They stared at me like I was a stranger. Like they were only just now seeing me for the first time. I didn't say anything cruel. I didn't need to. Their silence, their pale faces, their sudden fear of being left behind, that was enough. I didn't owe them comfort, and I wasn't offering excuses. They gambled on the wrong child, and for the first time, they understood the price. I didn't stay long. I didn't wait for questions or apologies. I hugged Dr. Corbin goodbye, shook hands with classmates, and walked away, leaving my parents standing there in their confusion. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, the air felt light and clean, like freedom. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. My future wasn't behind me. It was ahead, and this time, it belonged only to me. After the ceremony, I thought it was over. I thought the quiet goodbye was enough. But my parents weren't done. They caught up to me in the parking lot, voices tight, steps fast. My mom grabbed my arm lightly, not angry, desperate. "Rowan, wait. We need to talk." My dad stood beside her, jaw clenched like he was holding in questions or excuses, maybe both. They looked stunned, almost offended. As if my success without them had somehow betrayed them. My mom's voice shook. "Why didn't you tell us any of this? The scholarship, the internship, paying off your loans. We could have helped." The words sounded empty, too late, almost rehearsed. She said could have, but never once during those years did they ask if I needed help. My dad added, "You should have come to us. We're your parents." His tone suggested they still believed they had been part of my journey. As if I owed them thanks. as if I wasn't standing there on my own strength. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just looked at them, steady and calm. You taught me independence by abandoning me, I said quietly. You paid for Marissa's comfort. I paid for my future. The words hung in the air, heavier than anything else I could have thrown at them. My mom blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. My dad shifted his weight, suddenly unable to meet my eyes. They weren't angry. They were scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of realizing too late what they had done. Just then, Marissa walked up, car keys in hand, sunglasses pushed on top of her head. She had missed the ceremony speech because she was busy with friends. She didn't even pretend to care. What's going on? She asked, chewing gum, looking annoyed by the tension. Mom whispered, your brother is moving to Seattle. Marissa rolled her eyes. So, people move. Why is everyone acting dramatic? Then she turned to me and shrugged like nothing mattered. You always make things bigger than they are, Rowan. We all turned out fine. You should be happy and stop blaming everyone. I looked at her, the girl who had been handed every comfort while I scraped through life alone. I felt no jealousy anymore, just clarity. I'm not blaming anyone, I said softly. I just finally saw the truth. She scoffed. Oh please. You act like you were neglected. They supported both of us. I held her gaze and spoke the truth I had carried for years. No. They supported you. They raised you. I raised myself. Then I turned to my parents and delivered the final truth, the one they deserved to hear. You didn't raise a child. You raised a backup. I became more than you ever planned for me. Silence pressed down like a thick blanket. No one spoke. No one tried to stop me as I stepped back. I didn't slam doors. I didn't storm off. I walked away calmly, my steps steady and sure. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I was finally free. And in that quiet exit, I found a peace I had never known in that family. Sometimes walking away isn't anger. Sometimes it's dignity. And that day, I chose mine. Seattle felt like a clean breath after years of holding my lungs tight. The first night there, the city lights reflected off the bay like tiny promises. My apartment was small, quiet, mine. For the first time, I woke up without fear of falling behind or being compared to someone else. I started my new job, met people who saw me without weighing me against a sibling, and slowly built a life where my worth wasn't measured by how much I could prove. My parents called in the beginning. Missed calls, short voicemails, awkward texts. We're proud of you. We miss you. Call home soon. I didn't block them, but I didn't rush to reply. I kept things polite, short, distant. Boundaries felt strange at first, like wearing a new coat that didn't quite fit yet. But each day, it fit better. I sent an occasional message only when I wanted to, not when guilt tugged at me. They didn't get unlimited access just because they regretted losing it. Marissa and I barely spoke. One day, I got a message from my dad. Your sister didn't pass her boards. She's struggling. We're trying to help. I stared at the words for a long moment, not with satisfaction, but with quiet understanding. They had poured everything into her, believing she was the safe bet. Now they were drowning in worry. She wasn't a failure. She was simply human, but they had never prepared her for life without a safety net. I didn't reply to the message. It wasn't mine to fix. Holidays came. I mailed a simple card. No long note, no visit, no pretending. Just a polite greeting. That was enough. I wasn't cutting them off to punish them. I was protecting the peace I fought for. My new friends became the people I laughed with, leaned on, trusted. We cooked cheap dinners, celebrated small wins, and talked about futures filled with hope instead of duty. I didn't look over my shoulder anymore. My life finally felt like it belonged to me. Sometimes at night, when the city quieted and the air smelled like the ocean, I would think of home, not with anger, but with acceptance. I had walked away, and I had lived. That was the real victory. I didn't need them to feel pain to feel whole. I didn't need revenge to feel strong. The truth was simple. Success wasn't the revenge. Freedom was. And every time they remembered that graduation day, the moment they realized I had outgrown the place that never nurtured me, they would feel that sting. Not because I punished them, but because they punished themselves long before I left. They paid for her college. I paid for my life. And in the end, only one of us graduated from them.